The human body begins a quiet betrayal somewhere around the sixth decade of life. Muscle fibers that once responded eagerly to movement start dissolving at a rate that most people never notice until the damage accumulates into something undeniable. By the time stairs become mountains and balance becomes a daily negotiation, nearly half the strength that once felt permanent has already vanished into the biological past. This process happens at roughly 3% per year, a number that sounds small until you multiply it across the years and realize how quickly capability erodes into struggle. What makes this decline particularly cruel is that most people assume it represents an irreversible sentence. They accept trembling legs and chronic exhaustion as the natural price of aging, never realizing that the very ritual they perform each morning could become the foundation of their recovery. Coffee, that familiar companion to dawn, holds within it the potential for transformation when combined with specific compounds that science has identified as muscle protectors. The cup itself changes nothing, but what enters that cup can alter the trajectory of physical decline in ways that most pharmaceutical interventions cannot match. The first ally in this reconstruction comes from a common spice that most kitchens already contain. Cinnamon carries within its structure a collection of compounds that fundamentally change how the body processes energy. When insulin fails to perform its essential work of moving nutrients from blood into cells, muscles begin to starve even as the bloodstream overflows with unused fuel. This hormone acts as the gatekeeper for glucose and amino acids, determining whether these building blocks reach the tissues that desperately need them or remain trapped in circulation until the body stores them as fat. Research published in nutrition journals has demonstrated that introducing cinnamon to meals produces measurable improvements in how efficiently cells absorb glucose. In populations struggling with insulin resistance, this simple addition increased nutrient uptake by approximately 1/5, a change significant enough to alter how muscles receive their fuel supply throughout the day. The mechanism operates through multiple pathways simultaneously. Cinnamon slows the rate at which the stomach empties its contents, preventing the sharp spikes in blood sugar that trigger equally dramatic crashes. When energy levels remain stable rather than oscillating between surplus and deficit, the body directs resources toward tissue repair instead of emergency storage. Beyond this metabolic steadying, cinnamon carries antioxidant molecules that actively reduce the inflammatory damage constantly occurring within aging muscle fibers. Inflammation operates like a slow fire, consuming tissue faster than the body can rebuild it. By dampening these destructive processes, cinnamon creates an environment where repair outpaces breakdown. The preparation requires nothing more than stirring half a measured spoon into morning coffee, where it dissolves into the liquid and begins its work within minutes of consumption. The taste adds warmth without sweetness, and the effect accumulates with daily repetition. The second addition shifts focus from nutrient absorption to delivery. Cocoa powder, stripped of the sugar and milk that usually accompany it, contains concentrated amounts of flavonols, plant compounds that fundamentally alter blood vessel behavior. As the cardiovascular system ages, vessels lose their flexibility and narrow slightly, reducing the volume of oxygen and nutrients that reaches distant tissues. Muscles suffer particularly from this reduction because they demand constant resupply during both activity and rest. When circulation falters, even well-fed muscles cannot access the materials they need for maintenance and growth. Studies examining flavonol consumption in older populations have documented improvements in vascular function exceeding 20%, measured through standardized tests of blood flow and vessel responsiveness. This enhancement translates directly into muscle performance because oxygen delivery determines how long tissues can sustain effort before exhaustion forces them to stop. The mechanism centers on nitric oxide, a signaling molecule that commands vessel walls to relax and widen. Flavonols trigger increased production of this compound, effectively opening the pathways that feed working muscles. The result manifests as reduced heaviness during movement and faster recovery after exertion. Cocoa also supplies magnesium in quantities significant enough to affect muscle function. This mineral governs the contraction and relaxation cycle that allows movement to occur smoothly rather than in spastic jerks. Deficiency leads to cramping and weakness, conditions that become increasingly common as dietary intake fails to meet the demands of aging physiology. Pure unsweetened cocoa powder provides these benefits without the metabolic burden of added sugar, which would undermine the very improvements the flavonols create. One measured spoon stirred into hot coffee delivers the compounds in their most bioavailable form, ready for absorption and use. The third component introduces an entirely different fuel source that bypasses the sluggish energy production systems that plague aging metabolism. Coconut oil and its refined derivative MCT oil contain medium-chain triglycerides, fat molecules structured differently than the long-chain versions found in most dietary sources. The body processes these unusual fats through an accelerated pathway that converts them almost immediately into ketones, alternative fuel molecules that muscles and brain can burn without the complex breakdown required for carbohydrates or standard fats. Clinical trials tracking seniors who incorporated MCT consumption into their daily routine documented measurable improvements in both muscle function and endurance within 6 weeks, changes that occurred without any modification to exercise habits. This finding reveals how profoundly fuel availability affects performance. Many older adults experience a puzzling exhaustion where their bodies seem to run out of energy despite adequate food intake. The problem lies not in calorie quantity but in the inefficient conversion of those calories into usable power. As carbohydrate metabolism becomes less reliable with age, muscles increasingly find themselves without the immediate energy they need to sustain activity. MCTs solve this problem by providing a fuel source that requires minimal processing. The liver converts them into ketones that enter the bloodstream and become available to tissues within minutes. This rapid availability means muscles never experience the prolonged energy drought that causes premature fatigue during even moderate activity. Additionally, ketone metabolism produces fewer inflammatory byproducts than glucose burning, reducing the cumulative damage that accelerates muscle loss. The preparation involves adding 1 measured spoon of coconut oil or pure MCT oil to hot coffee, then stirring or blending until the fat fully incorporates into the liquid. Starting with smaller amounts allows the digestive system to adapt, after which the body efficiently processes this alternative fuel source. And muscles gain access to steady, reliable energy that does not depend on the faltering machinery of carbohydrate breakdown. The fourth edition addresses a different dimension of muscle decline, one that operates invisibly until accumulated damage makes itself known through pain and stiffness. Ginger powder contains gingerols, molecular compounds that interrupt the inflammatory cascades constantly attacking aging tissue. Inflammation represents one of the primary forces dismantling muscle fibers faster than the body can reconstruct them. This process operates continuously rather than only after injury, creating a baseline of destruction that gradually overwhelms repair capacity. The result manifests as chronic soreness, prolonged recovery periods, and an increasing reluctance to engage in physical activity that triggers discomfort. Research examining daily ginger consumption has demonstrated measurable reductions in muscle soreness, with some studies documenting improvements approaching 25% after consistent use spanning less than 2 weeks. These findings reveal that inflammation reduction translates directly into functional improvement. When muscles no longer operate under constant inflammatory assault, the body redirects resources from damage control to actual rebuilding. Gingerols achieve this by blocking specific enzymes that propagate inflammatory signals through tissue. Without these chemical messengers amplifying the inflammatory response, muscles experience less collateral damage from routine activity. Beyond inflammation control, ginger enhances circulation through mechanisms similar to those activated by cocoa flavonols. Improved blood flow means accelerated delivery of oxygen and nutrients alongside faster removal of metabolic waste products that accumulate during exertion. This combination allows muscles to recover between efforts rather than entering each new activity already depleted from incomplete healing. For populations experiencing progressive weakness, this shift from chronic deficit to manageable stress can determine whether physical activity remains possible or becomes prohibitively painful. Preparing ginger for coffee consumption requires only half a measured spoon of dried powder stirred into the hot liquid, where it disperses and adds subtle warmth that complements rather than overwhelms the existing flavor profile. The fifth component builds on inflammation reduction by addressing the molecular switches that control inflammatory processes at their source. Turmeric contains curcumin, a compound with documented effects on the protein complexes that initiate and sustain chronic inflammation throughout the body. However, curcumin suffers from extremely poor bioavailability when consumed alone. The digestive system struggles to absorb it efficiently, allowing most of the compound to pass through unused. This limitation explains why many turmeric supplements produce disappointing results despite the robust scientific evidence supporting curcumin effectiveness. The solution lies in combination rather than isolation. Black pepper contains piperine, a molecule that dramatically enhances curcumin absorption by interfering with the metabolic processes that would otherwise break it down before it reaches the bloodstream. Studies have measured absorption increases exceeding 2,000% when these two compounds enter the system together, transforming an ineffective dose into a therapeutic one. This dramatic enhancement means that modest amounts of turmeric paired with minimal black pepper deliver more bioavailable curcumin than massive quantities of turmeric consumed alone. The mechanism through which curcumin protects muscle centers on inflammatory signaling proteins that remain chronically elevated in aging populations. These proteins function like alarm systems stuck in the active position, continuously broadcasting distress signals that summon immune responses even when no actual threat exists. The result is persistent tissue damage from friendly fire as the body attacks itself. Curcumin directly suppresses these alarm proteins, quieting the false signals and allowing muscles to exist in a state of repair rather than constant siege. The effect manifests as reduced stiffness, improved mobility, and decreased pain during movement. Preparation requires careful attention to the pairing that makes turmeric effective. Half a measured spoon of turmeric powder combined with a small pinch of ground black pepper stirred into hot coffee creates the chemical environment necessary for optimal absorption. The heat from the liquid helps activate the compounds while the pepper ensures they survive digestion long enough to enter circulation. Taken consistently, this combination provides sustained suppression of the inflammatory processes that otherwise consume muscle tissue faster than the body rebuilds it. The sixth addition shifts from protection to active reconstruction by supplying the raw materials muscles need to synthesize new tissue. Whey protein represents one of the most researched supplements in nutritional science, with decades of data confirming its effectiveness in supporting muscle growth and maintenance. What makes whey particularly valuable for aging populations is its speed of digestion and amino acid profile. After 60, the body becomes progressively less efficient at converting dietary protein into actual muscle tissue through a process called muscle protein synthesis. This declining efficiency means that the same protein sources that easily maintained muscle mass at 40 prove insufficient at 70. Whey addresses this problem through two key characteristics. First, it digests rapidly, flooding the bloodstream with amino acids within 30 minutes of consumption. This speed matters because muscle protein synthesis operates in response to amino acid availability. When levels surge quickly, the synthetic machinery activates with corresponding intensity. Second, whey contains exceptionally high concentrations of leucine, the specific amino acid most responsible for triggering the growth response. Studies comparing whey consumption to other protein sources have documented muscle protein synthesis rates 60% higher in older adults, improvements achieved without any change in physical activity levels. This dramatic enhancement reveals why protein source matters as much as protein quantity. Many seniors consume adequate total protein across their meals but distribute it in ways that never produce the acute amino acid elevation necessary to activate synthesis. A steady trickle of protein throughout the day maintains baseline function but fails to trigger active rebuilding. Whey creates the surge that aging physiology requires to overcome its inherent resistance to growth signals. The preparation involves stirring 1 measured spoon of unflavored whey protein powder into hot coffee, where it dissolves smoothly without altering the beverage taste significantly. Unflavored varieties avoid the added sugars and artificial ingredients that characterize flavored versions, delivering pure protein without metabolic complications. For individuals sensitive to lactose, whey isolate provides the same benefits with almost all milk sugar removed through additional processing. Consumed daily, this addition supplies muscles with the fast-acting amino acid influx they need to overcome the synthesis resistance that characterizes aging tissue. The seventh addition addresses a fundamental truth that most discussions of muscle strength overlook entirely. Muscles cannot function effectively without the structural framework that anchors them to bones and allows force to translate into movement. Collagen constitutes nearly 1/3 of all protein in the human body, forming the essential architecture of tendons, ligaments, and connective tissue. When collagen production declines sharply after 60, as it inevitably does, the consequences extend far beyond cosmetic concerns about skin elasticity. The actual mechanical structures that permit muscles to operate begin deteriorating, creating instability and weakness that no amount of muscle fiber alone can overcome. Research examining collagen supplementation in older populations has produced striking results that challenge conventional assumptions about protein needs. Seniors who added collagen peptides to their daily intake gained more than 5% additional muscle mass and strength over 12 weeks compared to control groups, improvements that occurred through structural repair rather than muscle fiber growth alone. This finding illuminates why some individuals with apparently adequate muscle mass still experience profound weakness and instability. The problem lies not in the engine but in the mounting system. When tendons and ligaments lose integrity, muscles cannot generate or transmit force effectively regardless of their inherent strength. Collagen peptides work by supplying specific amino acids that the body uses preferentially for connective tissue synthesis. Glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline appear in collagen at concentrations far exceeding their presence in standard dietary protein sources. Without adequate supplies of these building blocks, the body cannot maintain the connective tissue framework even when other aspects of nutrition appear sufficient. The peptide form represents collagen that has been broken down into smaller molecular fragments through hydrolysis, a processing step that dramatically improves digestive absorption. Whole collagen molecules prove too large for efficient uptake, but hydrolyzed versions enter the bloodstream readily and become available for tissue incorporation. Beyond structural support, collagen provides an unexpected benefit through its effect on sleep quality. Glycine functions as an inhibitory neurotransmitter that promotes deeper, more restorative sleep stages. Since muscle repair occurs predominantly during sleep, improvements in sleep architecture translate directly into enhanced recovery. Many older adults experience fragmented sleep that prevents the sustained deep stages necessary for optimal tissue maintenance. By supporting both the structural framework and the recovery environment, collagen addresses muscle health from two complementary directions. Preparation involves stirring 1 measured spoon of hydrolyzed collagen powder into hot coffee, where it dissolves completely without affecting flavor. The compounds enter circulation within hours and begin contributing to the ongoing repair processes that maintain connective tissue integrity. The eighth and final addition represents the most powerful intervention on this list, achieving results in clinical trials that researchers initially questioned because the improvements seemed implausibly large. Maca powder originates from a root vegetable cultivated in the high-altitude regions of Peru, where traditional use spans centuries. Modern scientific investigation has revealed why this plant produces such dramatic effects on physical performance and muscle recovery. Maca functions as an adaptogen, a class of compounds that help the body regulate stress responses and maintain physiological balance under challenging conditions. Studies documenting maca supplementation in older adults have recorded improvements in endurance and reductions in fatigue scores approaching 40% within 12 weeks, results that exceed what most targeted interventions achieve. These changes stem from maca ability to modulate cortisol, the stress hormone that becomes chronically elevated in many aging individuals. Cortisol serves essential functions in acute stress responses, but persistent elevation triggers muscle protein breakdown as the body cannibalizes tissue to generate emergency fuel. This catabolic process operates continuously in states of chronic stress, steadily eroding muscle mass regardless of protein intake or activity levels. Maca reduces cortisol production to more appropriate levels, eliminating the constant signal for tissue breakdown. Simultaneously, it supports mitochondrial function through mechanisms that remain under active investigation. Mitochondria serve as the power plants within muscle cells, generating the energy molecules that fuel contraction and movement. As these cellular structures decline in number and efficiency with age, muscles lose their capacity for sustained effort. Maca appears to enhance mitochondrial activity and potentially stimulate the production of new mitochondria, effects that translate into improved endurance and faster recovery between bouts of activity. The compound also supplies plant sterols and a complete amino acid profile, providing additional raw materials for tissue maintenance. Unlike simple stimulants that create temporary energy surges followed by crashes, maca produces sustained improvements in baseline energy availability. The preparation requires 1 measured spoon of maca powder stirred into hot coffee, where it contributes a subtle nutty flavor that many people find pleasant. The effects build gradually with consistent daily consumption, becoming noticeable within weeks as strength, balance, and endurance show measurable improvement. Considered together, these 8 additions create a comprehensive intervention that addresses muscle decline through multiple simultaneous mechanisms. Cinnamon and ginger reduce the inflammatory damage that constantly destroys tissue. Turmeric with black pepper suppresses the molecular signals that trigger chronic inflammation. Cocoa and coconut oil ensure adequate fuel delivery through improved circulation and alternative energy pathways. Whey protein supplies the amino acid surge necessary to activate muscle synthesis in resistant aging physiology. Collagen rebuilds the structural framework that allows muscles to function effectively. Maca regulates the hormonal environment and enhances cellular energy production. No single component provides complete protection, but their combined effects create conditions where rebuilding outpaces breakdown. The choice facing every person experiencing progressive weakness comes down to intervention versus acceptance. Muscle loss after 60 represents neither inevitable nor irreversible decline. The same beverage consumed every morning can become the delivery system for compounds that science has proven capable of restoring strength and function. Each addition requires nothing more than stirring a measured spoon into hot liquid, yet the cumulative effect of these simple acts determines whether the coming years bring increasing dependence or sustained capability. The decision to act or defer shapes the trajectory of physical independence far more powerfully than most pharmaceutical interventions, yet it demands only consistency rather than dramatic lifestyle upheaval. Every morning presents the opportunity to choose reconstruction over resignation, to transform a familiar ritual into the foundation of restored strength.